Hey, Alex here, part of Mike Lively's instructional design team at Northern Kentucky University, and I've been asked to talk to you today about sculpting primitives. And we're going to use a program called Sculpty Paint to do that. Now, you've probably got some questions like, what's a primitive and why would I ever want to sculpt one? But listen for the answers to these questions because you're going to want to know how to sculpt primitives. Okay, first off, what's a primitive? Well, a primitive is the most basic shape you can make inside of any 3D program. Think about any computer-generated animated movie you've seen, or any video game you've ever played, or even Second Life online. Everything that you see on screen is made up of primitives. Now, a primitive itself is made up of polygons, and if you look at the image in front of you, each one of these little rectangles is a polygon, and a collection of these makes up a primitive. Now, I don't want to get too technical on all that. If you want to learn more, feel free to go to Wikipedia and look it up. There's a lot of cool stuff about primitives on there, and you'll probably want to look that up. Now, a sculpted primitive is when you take one of the basic primitives, whether it be a sphere or a cube, and then manipulate the surface of it to make it into another shape. Believe it or not, what you're actually looking at on screen is a sphere. Now, wait a minute. That looks like a model rocket, Alex. There's no way that's a sphere. It is a sphere. I took this sphere and then sculpted it down into this model rocket you see in front of you. Isn't that awesome? Pretty cool. Now, how does a program know to turn a sphere into the model rocket? Now, this is a beauty of sculpted primitives. All the information that a program needs to turn the sphere into this rocket is encapsulated in this. This little square up here represents an image file, whether it be a JPEG, in this case it's a PNG, and that houses all the information for the surface of the sphere to be changed into this model rocket. How cool is that? It cuts down on system resources. It's just awesome. All right, now why do you want to use sculpted primitives over normal primitives? All right, in the old school way, what you would have to do if you wanted to make this model rocket, for example, you would have to construct all of this from basic primitives. So I guess at the very basic level, at the top, this nose cone would be made out of a cone. This whole body would be made out of one cylinder. This rocket engine at the bottom would be made out of another cylinder. And all the fins would be made out of another shape. So we're talking 7 different primitives for one shape. Or you can sculpt a sphere into a rocket. And that's only one primitive. Now, why you would want to do this is primitive economy. Let's say that you're in Second Life and you own land or something. You're limited to the number of primitives you can have in a certain area or space or whatever. It's a lot better to go ahead and use a sculpted primitive over a lot of just basic primitives. Now, if something that's inherent into primitives is that they're going to have kind of a soft edge, they're going to look more organic, which is awesome. If we go ahead and navigate to Wikipedia's page on sculpted primitives, and you can get there by wiki.secondlife.com, you're going to see some examples of this. See this fruit? Isn't that awesome? Really cool. Look at this couch. How neat is that? Now, a lot of these things have really awesome textures on the surface that give them kind of this depth and this kind of dynamic feel. We'll get into textures later in another tutorial, but just know that that's going to be there. But this is only 7 primitives. 7! This would take hundreds of primitives if we were just going to do basic primitives. And of course, if you're going to do anything that has kind of an organic feel like a face or anything like that, you're definitely going to use sculpted primitives. And I mentioned something about economy earlier. Again, in Second Life, you're limited to the number of prims if you own land, so sculpting primitives may help you out on that. But also, if you're programming things, let's say you're programming something 3D and paper vision for Flash, primitive economy can help you relieve system resources, because anytime in the Flash browser, or when you're running Flash, everything renders from the processor directly. Now, in new versions of Flash, the Flash player, you can target certain things to render to the graphics card, which is awesome. But until that really catches on, or until that's really, I guess, smoothed out, it's going to be better if you kind of have an economy of prims. All right. So I've sold you on using sculpted primitives. You're going to want to try this out. What's a quick and easy way to get going on sculpted primitives? I'm glad you asked. For that, we're going to get Sculpty Paint. You're actually looking at the interface for Sculpty Paint. We'll get more into that in another tutorial. But Sculpty Paint is pretty much, it's a free, really easy to use 3D manipulation tool that will take these primitives and allow you to sculpt them. Now, it's not as powerful as some other programs like Maya or 3ds Max or even Blender, which is free. But it will give you a taste of what those programs can do, and it'll also just kind of introduce you to the 3D modeling world. And again, Sculpty Paint is absolutely free. So let's go ahead and show you how to get Sculpty Paint. I'm going to navigate there via Google. Oh, check that out. That's NKU's new webpage. How awesome is that? feel free to peruse that on your own time. But right now, we're going to go to Google and use Sculpty Paint. Now, I go to Google, but you can really use any search engine you'd like. But just type in Sculpty Paint into the search engine. Wait for the results. And if this doesn't come up first, search for this one. The title of it is Sculpty Paint Built with Processing. Click on that, and it's going to take you to Pixel Lab. Now, Sculpty Paint is available for all major platforms. I've only had experience with using the Windows and Mac version, but they're all the same. Or I assume that Linux would be the same as the other ones. As far as setup goes, it's really straightforward. Now, if you just click on, I'm using a Windows platform, so I'm going to have to click on that. It'll prompt you to download it. Now, I've already downloaded it to the desktop, so there's no need to go through all that again. So I'm going to hit cancel. And it gets this zip file called Sculpty Paint. Open that up, or unzip it. And there's another folder inside of there. If I click and go inside this folder, I have everything in here to run Sculpty Paint. No install files. The application itself is based on a Java platform, so as long as you're running the current version of Java, which most of you should have no problem with that at all, just double-click on that, and it should launch the program. Now, I recommend that you put the Sculpty Paint folder that houses this program in a place you're going to know where it is, whether you put that in your Programs folder or your My Documents folder, because everything that you save inside of Sculpty Paint will save into that folder. You can't really change it. That's just something you'll have to deal with, and it's not inconvenient at all. It's really cool. For the Mac users, a little heads up. Before you can start running Sculpty Paint, you're going to have to go into Terminal and do a little bit of coding. Don't get freaked out. It's really easy. Inside of that folder that you'll unzip, if you have the Mac version, there'll be another kind of Word document in here that will tell you how to do that. It's really simple. Don't be intimidated by it. And pretty soon, you'll be sculpting. Now, I put a little shortcut on my desktop so I can easily go to Sculpty Paint and use this little Mayan icon because I like to be snazzy. But yeah, just double-click on that, and you are launching Sculpty Paint, and you're ready to make all kinds of cool 3D sculpts out of basic shapes like spheres or cubes. And that's pretty much all for this tutorial. Now, in future tutorials, we're going to get more in-depth as far as like showing you all these awesome tools you can use inside of Sculpty Paint, and giving you a few tips on how to import these things in Second Life if that's what you like, and even later perhaps import these things as the paper vision so you can run them inside of Flash and do some really cool 3D stuff there. But yeah, that's other tutorials. This has been Alex, again, part of Mark Lively's instructional design team at Northern Kentucky University, and thank you very much for listening.